If I had to give you a flavour of Peter Newman's book Angela, I'd describe it as a mix between John Buchan's The 39 Steps, Dan Brown's Angels and Demons, and a Marvel Avengers story. And in my opinion, it will adapt to film beautifully. Peter's with me now. Tell me how you came to write about Angela.
I originally started writing the book for Angela while I was at a creative writing course. Each week at the creative writing course we'd study different types of writing, and we eventually got round to a one-act play. And we had to write this one-act play with minimal characters and minimal scenery. So I came up with the idea of two people meeting for the first time in a small restaurant. So it was the two people meeting and a waiter. So it's just three characters and a table and a couple of chairs. It's all very minimal. And I decided they met. It was like the first time they met. It was like a blind date. But obviously there had to be something special about them meeting up. They couldn't just be two ordinary people just meeting. So I came up with the idea that one of them was in fact undercover. So it was like she was an undercover angel. She'd been spying on this other person. She'd sort of fallen in love with him. She didn't want to spook him out, but she wanted him to fall in love with her. So she looks like a mortal. She hasn't got her wings. She looks like a perfectly ordinary person. They meet up. They have this long meeting, this meal, and she tries to convince him that she is in fact an angel, which he takes as a great surprise and thinks she's just taking the mickey out of him. But she does manage to persuade him she's an angel. And towards the end of the play, the waiter in fact dies. The waiter dies, and she goes on to prove that she's an angel, and then she whisks him off and they disappear to Venice. And that was where the idea originally came from. Much to the annoyance of my creative writing teacher, I wrote a second act. This was supposed to be a one-act play. She was quite annoyed when I handed it in because I'd broken the rules of what she'd set out. It was supposed to be one act. I'd come up with two acts. But we read it out in class, and everyone in class was quite impressed and really enjoyed it. I went home and I had this story of these two people meeting in this restaurant, and I wanted to know what brought them to this meeting, and more importantly, where they went from here. So that's where I started the book. I came up with the story of Matthew coming to the restaurant, the story of Angela meeting Matthew, and where they went from here. Angela is very conscientious. She knows what she wants and she goes for it. Matthew is very shy, very nervous. And originally I don't think he even believes that she would fall in love with him. She's far too beautiful, far too nice for him. But she managed to persuade him. They are in love. And they go on. And that's where the book originally started from.
So, Peter, we don't want to ruin the story for anyone that wants to read the book. So give us a brief synopsis without any spoilers, if you would.
Angela is a conscientious angel. Very conscientious. She follows the rules. She just goes about her daily work. She comes down to earth to guide the recently deceased to heaven. And she does this. She walks into this office and she's sitting there for a few minutes before the person dies, waiting for them to die. While she's in this office, she sits upon the desk and just glances around, and her eyes settle on Matthew. And Angela's never thought about love. She's never thought about falling in love or anything like that. This is love at first sight. It's almost like a punch in the stomach when she sees him. So she goes about her usual task, goes and sees her superior and tells her superior how she feels, and it goes from there. They give her permission to come down and talk to Matthew, and that's where the story really starts off. It's basically a love story, but with many twists.
So everyone has their own idea of heaven, Peter. In your book, the idea of heaven is very different to mine. Tell us about your vision of heaven.
My idea of heaven is a central city. It's all very white. It's very marble. It's surrounded by plains. At the edge of one of these plains is a huge, huge forest. It's the Forest of Eden. And beyond that there's many other sort of kingdoms and worlds that we will maybe investigate in the later books, not at the moment.
And your god is a woman.
I thought this would be quite an interesting twist. I thought nobody would think about this when they started reading the book. But let's have an interesting twist. Let's make God a woman. And there's a lot of the women in the book are actually quite powerful women, like Angela herself.
Now, whilst your main characters are on the run, they travel to lots of places: Venice, Scotland, Greenland and beyond. Have you been to those places, or are you writing from your imagination?
I've been to Scotland, but no, I haven't. I hadn't travelled to Greenland, but I thought it'd be a great place to hide a sword in a frozen kingdom, in a frozen cave. So I did rely on the internet a lot with that.
And the storyline takes us around the world, but the final scenes are set in London. And is that did you want it there because you knew London?
Yes, I knew London. I had this grand image in my head of the final characters meeting in the Mall with Buckingham Palace at one end, and they basically walk towards each other. London would have to be completely empty, so it's all been emptied, it's all very quiet. It's almost like an old cowboy film where the good is walking towards the bad.
Once again, trying not to give away too much of the story, scientifically, is it possible to drive a car along the underground tube line?
I believe it is. A certain spy once did it on a railway. And the tyres were burst, so the wheels are quite a good shape to go on rails, and I do believe they did it. There is a steam railway in Yorkshire that have a Land Rover that has convertible wheels, and that goes on rails as well. So as long as the tyres have burst and been ripped off, the wheels are the perfect shape to go on rails. So I believe it is possible, yes.
Don't try this at home. Peter, I understand your full-time job is as a funeral director. Has that had a massive influence on your imagination whilst writing the story of Angela?
I actually came up with Angela before I became a funeral director. So everyone believes because I'm a funeral director, it has helped me come up with some ideas for Angela. It wasn't where it all began. As I say, I was still working as a printer when I originally came up with the idea while I was at the writing class. But it certainly influenced me with the angels.
I said in my introduction to the book that it would make a good film. Who would play your two main characters if you were casting it?
For Matthew, I've always seen Martin Freeman from The Office. I've always seen him. I've sort of based the character almost like him, really. So that would be very easy. Angela's a different thing. She would need to be sort of in her 30s, very blonde. I mean, I've got my favourite film stars like Cameron Diaz or Kate Winslet. I don't know. I think with makeup and a wig, we could make them turn into Angela. Angela's always been the difficult one for me to exactly sort of find a face.
Peter, as you close the book, it says to be continued. Have you started writing the next part?
I have started writing the next part, yes. I'd thought about the second part when I was only just started writing the first part. I had it all planned out in my head. And when I started writing the book, I knew what the very final line in this book was going to be, which would give a perfect hook for the second book.
Angela has her own website.
She does. www.angelaisanangel.com. She is there, and there are 3 other characters, lots of information about the characters all on the website, and there's also a section about me.
And my final thought is that I was really comforted throughout this kind of ups and downs of this story to read that when the going gets tough, they drink tea in heaven and they still have queues for things. Peter Newman, good luck with Angela. I look forward to reading her next adventure.
Thank you very much indeed.